Hi, my name is Jason and I'm an English teacher from Toronto, Canada. Today we're going to talk about some of the funniest mistakes I've seen in English. So quite often in my travels around Ukraine and Eastern Europe, I've seen a lot of interesting English mistakes on signs, menus, and with some of my students as well. So the fortunate thing that if you are a Russian or Ukrainian speaker or a speaker of any Eastern European language, quite often there's not that many mistakes that you can make in English that would maybe look funny or stupid. So usually when you make mistakes in English, most people will understand you and it won't be a problem for you. So I always encourage students to make mistakes. But there are some occasions where some funny mistakes do happen, and I'll go through a few of them with you today. The most common mistake I see, and perhaps one of the funniest for native speakers, is the expression "feel myself." In English, when we feel something, we can do this with objects, different things, but if it's about our personal feelings, our mood, our emotions, we never say ourself. We always say something like, I feel good, I feel sad, I feel happy. But if you say, I feel myself, this means that you sexually touch yourself. So this can be very funny for native speakers. And on occasion, I've had to teach many students who may have used this in the wrong way. I had a student once who felt that he was following the rules, and he got in trouble for something, I don't remember what. But he told me that he felt himself according to the rules. So, of course, this could be very funny for a native speaker. The next one I remember is about the phrasal verb to lay off. Now, to lay off is a phrasal verb that's very important to remember, and I'll tell you why. But first, I'll tell you the story. I had a fellow English teacher who was teaching a class, and one day, one of his students came into the class really sad and depressed. And my friend asked the student, how are you doing today? You don't look so happy. The student responded by saying, I got laid. And my friend looked at him again and he said, really? Why are you so depressed? And he said more angrily, I got laid. And my friend says, well, that should make you feel so depressed. And he finally said, I lost my job and I don't know what I'm going to do. So my friend realized that he got laid off. So to get laid off means to lose your job because there's not enough work. So a very common expression. To get laid, however, means to have sex. So it was very funny that he was so depressed about this situation. But I encourage people to remember to be laid off simply because of the fact that this is a synonym of to be fired. But to be fired means that you're a bad employee. So never use fired when you tell people that you lost your job, unless you actually were a bad employee. Remember to say that I was laid off. The next one I have is a little bit of a warning on when it comes to swearing in English or using bad expressions. They may not be so good to use if you don't know exactly what you're doing. I had a friend once who was visiting a McDonald's and spending time with her friends. Afterwards, she was approached by some random drunk stranger who wanted some money. I guess he was hungry or something like this. My friends refused to give him money and he turned around and he slapped his ass and he said to them, fuck my ass. And now this is not a good expression to use in English in any case. And what he meant to say was kiss my ass. So kiss my ass means that you are angry with someone and you don't care what they say. Fuck my ass, however, is a homosexual expression that could really maybe make him feel very embarrassed if he really knew what he said. The next one I have is about a misinterpretation between the words staff and stuff. Quite often these sound like they're pronounced the same, but they have very different meanings. staff with an A and stuff with a U. So stuff is about random things, stuff you have. Staff is a long stick object that you use for walking. So usually a staff might be used by a wizard in Lord of the Rings or something like that. I visited an aqua park one time where I saw a sign that said, "Please watch your staff." Of course, the sign meant stuff, that you should watch the things that you own, because staff, again, is a long walking stick that belongs to a wizard. So unless many wizards use the aqua park, I highly doubt that this is what they really meant to say. Okay, another place where I see a lot of English mistakes is when it comes to signs and menus in different restaurants when I travel abroad. There is a very popular dish in Ukraine and Russia that is called holodiets in their language, but has a very bad translation in English. In fact, the correct translation in English for this dish would be something like meat gelatin or jellied meat, really would be the best thing you could say. There was a dish in one restaurant I saw that was made of chicken, however, so they described this as jellied cock. And the problem is in English, we do use the word cock, but it's more in Old English to talk about chicken. Nowadays, it means a part of a male anatomy. So this could be very painful if you think about this too much. So this was a funny mistake in one menu I saw. Another menu I found with a very funny mistake was a menu that had a dish that was simply a pot that had some kind of food inside. I'm not sure if it was rice or meat or whatever it was. On the menu, they described it as pot. Now here, if you take away the article a, it becomes uncountable. So countable a pot refers to a dish you cook food in. Uncountable pot refers to marijuana. So when you see pot on a menu, it looks quite interesting. And in fact, the English description underneath was a tasty little miracle, which made this even funnier. So, as you can see, there are a lot of ways that funny mistakes do happen in English when translating. But generally, these are pretty rare, so you can feel confident when you're speaking that you probably won't make any of these funny mistakes. But if you do, we understand, and everyone's happy that you are improving and learning English. And that's it from me for today. Please don't forget to subscribe to the link below, and I will see you next time.